Hello and welcome to another screencast. Now for this session I'm going to show you a variety of versions of A Midsummer Night's Dream, all done in a slightly different way just to give you an idea of the options available to you when you create such things as these ebooks. Now what I'm showing you on the screen at the moment is my iPad. I'm using Apple iBooks. This is the reader for ebooks. And I've got a number of different versions that I'm going to show you and explain to you in a very summarized way just how these were created and what the differences are. First of all, we'll start with the basic one. Now this is a reflowable EPUB. So this has been created with Adobe InDesign and then exported to EPUB 3. There are a few little changes that I've made to make sure that things work on the Apple iPad, but basically this is a bog standard EPUB file, and I can simply swipe through and show you some of the text here. So here we have the beginning, a summarized version from Charles and Mary Lamb, and then we can just scroll through and read this text. Let's just go straight onto the table of contents and go into Act 1. Here we can see the beginning of Act 1, Scene 1. We have an image which I can double tap to enlarge up, scroll through and so on. So here you can see we've got the styling, and we've got an indication of the page numbers that we're on. We have got 20 pages of 89. I can also increase the font size by doing this. You'll also see that in the fonts I'm using the original, which means that I've embedded fonts into this, and I've done that through Adobe InDesign. I can, or the user can, change the font to these other ones as well, but let's leave that back to the original. And maybe we'll just decrease the font size again. So we can, the user has some control over it, and the table of contents allows us to navigate through. Let's have a look at Act 2. We can double tap on this picture to enlarge it up, and so on. Now, also the other thing about this version that I've got is that if I turn my iPad around, you'll see that I've got a double page view. Now I am using Apple iOS 7 with the latest version of the Apple iBooks app, so we have no, so to speak, no book chrome, nothing that indicates that it's a book, nothing to make it look as if we have shadows or pages or anything like that. It's just very, very simple. Double page spread, and I'll just, again, I can reduce the font down to make that appear a little bit more friendly. Obviously, you know, there are some specific peculiarities with this. We don't have an indication of the two different pages, and I have not been able to control exactly which is becoming a left page and which is becoming a right page. We can double tap on this picture and it enlarges it up as large as it will go, and so on. Okay, so there are a variety of other things that we could look at here. Now I've turned it back round. Now let's have a look at a different version. This one here, for this one here I have some multimedia in this. Let's actually use the table of contents to directly go to here, where we have A Midsummer Night's Dream 1935 edition. So this is just a small example of multimedia that we can add. Here's the Dramatae Personae. Again, as you can see, we have the image that we can enlarge up. Now the difference, apart from the fact that I have some multimedia again,
4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. 4 nights will quickly dream away the time. And then the moon.
And some further multimedia. Let's actually just go to Act 2. No, sorry, Scene 2, I should say. And we'll look here at a bit more video.
Mary, our play is...
And we can just go through the text. Now the difference here is that when I turn my iPad around in a landscape view, this doesn't change. Of course, you can't see this because you're seeing it on my computer screen at the moment. But I've fixed the fix this into a portrait format, it is possible for us to edit the metadata within the EPUB to lock it to a portrait view on the iPad. That's really the most significant difference in this particular version. But otherwise, this has been created with Adobe InDesign and then a few modifications made. All the multimedia has been added using Adobe InDesign. Let's go back to the library. And now here's a different version. This particular version is a fixed layout EPUB. So for this one, you can see that we have every single page has some background image. That's the first thing that I should point out. We have a kind of a texture in the background. Also, if I tap here, you'll see that in my controller at the top of the screen, there's no indication that I can change the font size. So the user can't change the font size in this particular case. Let's have a look at the table of contents. The table of contents is provided in a different way now. We have a thumbnail image for every single page within the EPUB, or alternatively I can still use the more traditional table of contents. So let's have a look here. Now again, tapping on this doesn't make any difference. You can't see me doing that, of course, but I can't increase the font size and I can't increase the picture unless I pinch in. So you can't see this obviously, but I can pinch in to enlarge the picture, but I can't isolate the picture from the rest of the content. I can select a piece of text, and then I can select a piece of text like that, and then I can look that up just as I can in a reflowable ebook. You can see that I have an indication of the page numbers along the bottom, but that is something that I've added in. So to make something like this work, you really need to, you can use InDesign, but you need to make every single page needs to be made into an HTML document within the EPUB file itself, and then there is some significant editing within the EPUB to add, for example, things like background images, or to add this this controller and indication of the amount of text that we've read and so on the bottom of the screen. So we have quite a lot of things to do to make this work as a fixed layout EPUB. Okay, now let's look at the library again, and then finally within our iBooks app, I'm going to show you something almost completely different. This is actually something created with Apple iBooks. So Apple iBooks Author is the program freely available from Apple that allows you to create what they refer to as multi-touch books, which really are ebooks, but they are in a very specific format, only available for the Apple iPad. So this is an alternative way of working, but for this type of product you are really you're very much tied to the Apple iPad platform. And as you can see, this is opened in the table of contents, but I am looking at this in a vertical format, portrait format. Let's actually go to Act 1. Okay, now this is in a portrait format, and in portrait format I simply scroll through the text. You'll see that I've actually got a margin, a left-hand margin, and in that left-hand margin I have some what are called widgets. If I click on that image, it brings it up full screen, and so on. Another one here. And the significant thing about this is that we can't really use Adobe InDesign to create something like this, although we can use that as a starting point, as you'll see from my other screencasts on the topic. This is really just an alternative way of building an ebook, but it doesn't really go directly from InDesign to the EPUB format. You're actually creating something very specific, a very specific format for this particular device, the Apple iPad. But I'm going to turn this around now, this device around to the horizontal or landscape view, because you do get a completely different way of viewing this. When we're looking at this in a landscape view, we have the ability to control the page, or in this case the double page, as we like. So as you can see, I can put a full image on that side of the page, tap on it and it enlarges that up. And I can also include video as we did before. So let's actually go to the table of contents and go back to this page here. Here's my title page, and here's my video. Now we also have the ability to add other kinds of widgets. So for example, here is a widget which gives me a sequence of images, portraits of Shakespeare, a timeline with a scrolling timeline there, the life of Shakespeare, and then Act 1. And if we now go to the table of contents, you'll see that the table of contents is also arranged in a slightly different way from the basic standard EPUB version. Okay, so that really finishes my summary of the variety of versions of methods of, if you like, of making the same product through a number of different techniques.